Baltic Sea Adventure. This is a series about the Baltic Sea. Stone Age settlers and Viking longships, Northern Crusaders, pirates and merchants, modern day cargo ships, pleasure boats and ferries filled with tourists. Baltic Sea has always been a busy sea. Baltic Sea is surrounded by diverse cultures, languages and religions. Through history, it's been a place of religious, economical and political conflict. But it's not only wars that create shipwrecks. Baltic Sea is a hazardous sea, with extreme weather and shallow waters, thousands of islands and rocky shores, and harsh winters when thick ice covers the northern coastlines. The environmental conditions are also unique. The water is cold and the saline levels too low for most marine species to survive, including corals and the shipworm, that everywhere else destroys shipwrecks in no time at all. Baltic Sea is filled with well-preserved wrecks. It's a treasure trove for any diver or archaeologist. This adventure started a long time ago, far, far away. It's wintertime. We are in Finland in the suburbs of Helsinki, visiting our old friend, Jari Lintukankari. Jari's an engineer and a diver, interested in the maritime history. And for years, Jari's been thinking about a Second World War collision between a Russian submarine Lembit and a German U-boat U-479 that got lost in the Baltic Sea at the end of the Second World War. Wouldn't it be great to try and find the boat? And wouldn't that make a great documentary film? Jari had found the coordinates from the Russian Maritime Archives. After the events of the Second World War, they had been closed to the general public until recently. There's a lot of information there that has never seen the light of day. Not only were the Russians big-time record keepers, they've also made deliberate mess. Dates and names had been changed and coded so that their secrets would remain secrets. That's how they wanted them to stay. But nowadays information is starting to trickle through, and if you know what you're looking for, you might get lucky and find some useful info. It's the Second World War. Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia were at opposite ends, fighting for the Baltic Sea territory. The German U-boat U-479 was operational in the Baltic Sea and is rumoured to have been on a secret mission. Would it be possible to find the lost boat?
Hunt for U-479.
15th of November 1944, on its 19th day at sea, the U-boat U-479 gave its last radio report in the northeast of Oldenholm in Finnish archipelago. After that, the boat and its 51 crew hasn't been seen or heard of.
Lost at Baltic Sea.
always as a miracle.
Jari talked about this incident to his old friend Kimmo Kuusniemi, who is a film director and a musician. Kimmo is also Finnish, but he's lived in England for years. The German U-boat U-479 is carrying out short missions at the eastern Baltic Sea. Lembit, a Russian submarine, is patrolling the Finnish waters. There was a lot of underwater activity in the Baltic Sea during the Second World War, and the Germans also used these shallow waters as a training ground. These boats were on a collision course. It is a reported fact that the Russian submarine Lembit hit an unidentified object. Was it the U-479 that sank into the depths of the Baltic Sea? Lembit is slightly damaged, and after surfacing reports that it has seen oil and German debris floating on the sea surface. Could it have collided with the German U-boat U-479? After the incident, Lembit went to Helsinki, Finland, for repairs. Over 60 years later, we search for the truth. From a filmmaker's point of view, it's hard to make a film about something what might have happened and what could be found. What if we never find the U-boat? So we started to think, and the more we thought, the bigger the idea got. When Kimmo and his partner Tanya got back in the UK, the ball started rolling. How do we approach this? We are professional filmmakers, born and raised by the Baltic Sea, but complete novices in diving and anything to do with filming underwater.
Divers, what we thought that could do. Talk with this guy Lee Bishop here in UK, and he gave me some pointers.
Sounds like a big bite. We needed help. We will need people to interview.
Do you remember where the map is? And then there's a long ferry to Tallinn Strait across the Baltic.
Well, that's handy.
Otherwise we have
We'll need experts, and a side-scan sonar, and a boat, and good weather, and divers.
He has a diving shop in central Stockholm, and he should be a very experienced diver.
After phone calls and emails, we found out that some of the best technical divers by the Baltic Sea live in Sweden.
Yeah, we can try to arrange a video link. That would be the easiest way to talk. About today, like in an hour's time.
Oh, hi guys, yeah, just a second. Hey Tanya, we have a connection to Sweden.
Hi guys, we can hear you perfectly.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, my name is Kimmo.
Hi, my name is Tanya. Good to see you.
How are you guys?
We're fine, thank you.
We're fine.
Fine. Yeah, no, well, basically we are two Finns living here in UK. We've been here for 16 years and we are filmmakers and musicians. We've done...
So can you tell something about yourselves?
My name is Lotta, Charlotta Karlén, and I've been diving.
My name is Per, by the way.
Yeah, my name is Tor, and
We have been doing quite a lot of underwater filming for the last 5 years or so. I think we're pretty good doing what we do.
That's good.
Well, this whole thing started with my friend Jari. He found these coordinates from some obscure Russian archive and do some side scan sonaring and then filming. Are you guys like up to this type of Baltic Sea adventure?
It sounds very exciting.
very interesting.
It sounds really, really interesting actually. Never dived U-boat before.
Yeah,
Sounds great.
especially when it's in the Baltic.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, well, the plan is to go in August. So how is your August?
August is fine, I think.
All right, that sounds good. Yeah, the boat is still open. Jari is actually going to Tallinn, so
What do you need and how much stuff you have?
We need a reasonably large ship. If you have the time, you could probably come here to Stockholm,
Yeah.
and we can show you a bit of the equipment, and we can talk about the dives, and we can show you how we dive and tell you some more stuff.
And we'll go through everything, the different gases we use.
And you can go to the Vasa Museum, and you can do a lot of stuff here in Stockholm as
Yeah.
well. Is that possible for you?
Yeah, that actually sounds really
yeah.
good.
And the Vasa is a brilliant idea. Yeah, so if you get the permissions, that would be a really cool side trip.
Absolutely, we'll try and fix that.
So we need to get some tickets.
Try to come there as quick as we can.
Yeah.
Let's keep in contact.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Oh,
bye-bye.
that sounds good.
Yeah,
Det där verkar ju bra.
found our team.
Ja, det verkar
That would be
jättebra.
quite
Yeah,
nice. I think that's the biggest.
What if we expanded this a bit? What if we made a film about divers and the sea and the countries surrounding the sea and wreck hunters and archaeologists and other interesting people like Jari, who have dedicated their lives searching for wrecks and other things that no one else has ever looked for? We had no idea what we got ourselves into. The next year was a wild ride. After getting started, Kimmo and Tanya ended up travelling twice around the Baltic Sea, more than 10,000 miles in our trusty Land Rover. We made over 30 ferry trips, filmed for 120 days, and spent months with divers at the Baltic Sea. And we saw more and met more fascinating people and places that we could ever imagine. A simple film trip became a big adventure. The Baltic Sea is way up there in Northern Europe. The English name Baltic Sea is slightly misleading. It's not only surrounded by the so-called Baltic Sea states, but also Germany, Poland and Russia, and the Scandinavian, Sweden, Denmark and Finland. The locals don't necessarily call this water the Baltic Sea. For the Finns, Swedes and Germans, the Baltic Sea is the East Sea in their native tongues, and the Estonians logically call it the West Sea. Denmark, the gateway to the Baltic Sea, has always played an important part in the region. Germany shares its northern shoreline with the sea. We'll show some more of these sites later in the series. Poland has a long history with trading and traffic with the countries surrounding this sea. Lithuania has been occupied by any number of its neighbouring countries, yet has a fierce sense of its own culture. The same goes with Latvia. It has the Gulf of Riga, a long shoreline and sandy beaches. Estonia and its large green islands has shared much of its past with the Scandinavian countries. There is the biggest country of all, Russia, and St. Petersburg, an important imperial Russian city. Kaliningrad is still part of Russia. Mysterious, we say, and still not quite open for tourists. Finland, its rocky coast and thousands of islands have provided both shelter and peril to passing boats. Sweden has the longest coastline to the Baltic Sea. Since the Vikings, the Swedes have ruled these waters. So, the investigation begins in Stockholm, Sweden. Kimmo and Tanya flew to Stockholm, while Jari took the ferry to Tallinn, where the now Estonian Lembit submarine resides. We start getting webcam reports from the Swedish diving team. They have dived steam cargo ship August 1000 just outside Stockholm.
Hi Kimmo.
Hi Kimmo and Tanya.
This is the first attempt to actually make the voiceover thing we talked about. Hazardous. It lays in the Baltic, a couple miles north of Stockholm. Mm-hmm. It's a steam engine cargo ship. Like normal size, they are mostly between like 60 to 75 meters. The depth is like around 50 meters. It's a really nice wreck to dive because the visibility is often really good. The wreck lays on a shelf on the bottom that is like a little over 50 meters, maybe 55 meters deep. And on the sides, there's a really steep drop off down to like over 100 meters. So the thing is that really cold fresh water are pushed up from the deep part over the wreck. Yeah. And that's why the visibility is so good, because usually in this part of the Baltic the visibility is pretty bad, maybe a couple of meters, but here you can have like 20 meters. And the current on the wreck can be really bad. It can be so bad like you have to drag yourself on the boat to actually move. But on this time we used the scooters, down the water scooters as you see. Which helps a lot because we have like no problem at all scootering against the current. You can see a big extra reserve propeller.
Most of these ships carried an extra propeller on the ship with them all the time. This was because most of the time they were specially measured for that specific ship. Yeah. So
there are quite a lot of like personal stuff still on the boat, like stuff left by the crew when they left the boat. It wasn't us, but this other guy that we know, he found actually a wallet inside one of the cabins, and inside the wallet there was this wedding ring with an inscription of one of the crew members who actually died during the
sinking.
Yeah, the sinking. Right. So he wrote that name up, and he's actually right now trying to find out if there are any relatives left for. It's a pretty cool story.
While the team were busy diving, Charlotta has organised us to visit the Vasa. Without a doubt, the most impressive maritime museum in the whole world is the Vasa Museum in Stockholm, Sweden. This purpose-built museum houses a famous wreck of the 17th century warship. It's nice in the summer, but we were there in the winter time. Vasa is a massive Swedish warship that sunk in the centre of Stockholm on her maiden voyage in 1628. You could say that Vasa is the very own Titanic of Sweden. Just maybe the words most powerful or unsinkable should never be used when you're building a ship. Vasa lay at the bottom of the sea in an amazingly good condition for 330 years before she was found, raised, restored and displayed in all her glory for everyone to admire. We went to meet two enthusiastic Vasa experts. We'll let them introduce themselves. General public are not allowed on board, but we got special permission.
Well, I'm Fred Hawker. I'm the head of research here at the Vasa Museum. I've been here for 2.5 years. Before that, I was an archaeologist for the National Museum of Denmark, and before that, a professor at Texas A&M University, where I taught maritime archaeology. If you're a maritime archaeologist, there is no more amazing project you could work on than this one.
My name is Baltic. I work at the Swedish Maritime Museum as an underwater archaeologist, specializing in ships from Swedish Great Age of Power, 17th, 18th centuries.
I grew up on a farm in Virginia, as far away from the sea as you can imagine. But my father had been in the Navy and used to tell stories about being at sea, and I was fascinated by ships and sailing, and I came into it from that direction.
Well, I grew up close to the sea. My parents had a house in the middle of Sweden, very close to the ocean, and I was always interested in ships. And I started out as an archaeologist and a sports diver, and I tried to focus on the underwater archaeology.
I worked on projects in Jamaica, Bermuda, Turkey, the Netherlands, South Carolina, until I moved to Scandinavia. I was interested in ships, not really in diving. I learned to dive 20 years ago so that I could dive on shipwrecks and study them. And in fact, I don't even really much like diving. I don't do it on my vacation. It's more like riding the bus to work, I guess.
But of course, the best diving is wooden wrecks of the Baltic Sea.
Let's have a look at Stockholm, where the Vasa is. Stockholm is a truly modern metropolis and the capital of Sweden. There's the World Trade Center, and we are driving past the main railway and bus stations. Through the busy streets of central Stockholm, we are heading towards the must-see Old Town Gamla stan. Stockholm has been called the Venice of Scandinavia, which sounds rather grand and is almost true. The waterways have always played an important part in the history of this town. Many ships have sailed these waters and also many have sunk. The centre of Stockholm is literally full of wrecks. The town itself is built on 14 islands and situated between the big lake Mälaren and the Baltic Sea. The first building in Stockholm was a fortification for the purpose of controlling the traffic between the Baltic Sea and the Mälaren. There was a lot of traffic to be controlled. In the following decades, Stockholm developed into an important market town. Furs and wax, timber and iron, salt, fish, rye and wheat changed hands. Not forgetting luxury goods and especially amber, the gold of the Baltic Sea. Then, back to the museum. Fred and Patrick will tell us more about the Vasa.
The ship was built in a relatively short time, just a couple of years in the 1620s. Gustav Adolf, who was the king of Sweden in those days, needed to expand his navy because he was engaged in a new kind of amphibious warfare. At the same time, he wanted to demonstrate to his rivals, mostly Christian IV of Denmark and his cousin Sigismund in Poland, that he was the most powerful king in the Baltic. And one way to do that in that period, if you were a great king, you had to have a great navy with great ships. And so he had Vasa built to be the most powerful ship in the Baltic. And they didn't quite get the balance right. So when the ship sailed, it was very unstable. There was too much weight high up in the ship. And about 1,500 meters into its maiden voyage, a gust of wind heeled it over to one side. The gun ports were open so they could fire a salute. Water ran in through the gun ports on the port side and went to the bottom like a stone. It was about 100 meters offshore, maybe 150 meters offshore, and there were a lot of small boats that were following the ship because it was the maiden voyage. It was on its way down to its squadron station out in the archipelago. And so all those small boats rushed in and picked people up. And the ship's masts were still above the water, and so people could hang on to the rigging until they could be rescued if they couldn't swim. About 30 people died.
Vasa isn't exceptionally wrong constructed.
No,
right.
It's typically built for its time.
Yeah, the ships at the time were very unstable.
By our standards.
And a lot of ships sank because of that, but Vasa sank very early.
Right, which is fortunate for us. I mean, they tried to salvage the ship, and in the 1660s, they actually used divers and a diving bell and managed to recover all but 3 of the ship's 64 guns.
The diving bell was the only way to dive, unless you were free diving. Before diving suits, surface air pumps or gas tanks were invented. The diver, or divers, were simply lowered down into the water in a metal bell, taking down an air bubble with them. You could then reach out from the bell and salvage things, or dive in and out from it, and the air bubble would last for about 15 minutes, depending on the size of the bell. Professional salvage companies were big business. Metal and cargo needed to be salvaged from wrecks, and divers were using this method for hundreds of years, with very impressive results.
Voss is an early attempt to have 2 full gun decks. I mean, there weren't any ships with 2 full gun decks much before Vasa. But eventually that was settled on as the optimum solution in something that was called the 74 gun ship. But that took until about 1750 before they'd come up with the right combination of size and the number and type of guns to make it work. Vasa paradoxically provided a key piece of that experience. That there was an inquest afterwards, and one of the things that they were trying to get to the bottom of was, of course, whose fault it was, who could be punished, but also to get to some understanding of what the problem was, with the idea that you would not repeat that same mistake. And we know, for example, that Vasa's, you could sort of say, sister ship, a vessel of the same size and armament that was built at about the same time, served in the fleet for 30 years and was deliberately sunk as a blockage at the end of that time. So that they did, you can say, they did learn from this experience. You didn't reckon how powerful or important a warship was by its physical size. It was what kind of armament it carried. And Vasa's armament is what made it so powerful. 2 full decks of 24-pounder cannon. Nobody was punished.
As far as we know.
As far as we know, and because the text of the inquest isn't complete, but as far as we know, no official judgment was rendered. And if you read the testimony of all the people who were there, all the people who had a hand in building and outfitting the ship defended themselves. No one said, "Oh, yes, it was my fault." Everybody said, "No, I did my job." And in some cases, we know they weren't telling the truth because we can check what they said from the ship itself. In other cases, we can't. But it also seems that they had a month to get their story straight. And everybody tended to point towards 2 people as being responsible. The original designer of the ship, who had died the year before, so he couldn't defend himself, and he couldn't be punished, so he was a safe person to blame. And then they said, and he built the ship the king told him to. You know, the king established the specification for the ship. He decided how big it was going to be, and he decided how many guns it was going to have. Well, and you can't punish the king either. If you're going to have an inquest today, under the current rules of maritime law and responsibility, we have enough knowledge to say who would be blamed today, and that would be the captain, for 2 things. They conducted a stability test of the ship before it sailed, and they realized that the ship was not stable, dangerously unstable, as a matter of fact. But the Navy had accepted the ship anyway, and the captain had accepted the ship and sailed it. If the gun ports on the lower gun deck had been closed, the ship probably would not have sunk that day.
We'll continue with the Vasa later. We came to Stockholm to meet our diving team, and here they are in person. Per, a calm and focused sympathetic shrink, a real-life partner to Charlotta, and a diving partner in the group. We couldn't have done this series without his strength and technical know-how.
Han svarar inte.
Now I cannot see if you're ever in the neck of my hood.
Charlotta, Smiley Lotta, works in IT but is really into the history of wrecks. She dives and regularly writes about them. It's rare to find women in this business.
Sofia.
Tor, a man's man and a family man, was born in Norway and has a diving shop in the centre of Stockholm. Is an experienced technical diver and hooray, an underwater cameraman. Just what we were looking for. The waters outside Stockholm are deeper and more challenging than on the shallower eastern Baltic, giving them many opportunities to hone their skills. If you are enthusiastic enough, not even the ice or winter stops you from diving. First, the divers break the ice to make a safe entry hole. This trip is not a serious expedition. We are really just having some fun. It's that odd time between winter and spring, and the ice is melting already, just to freeze again during the night. That's how you get this pattern on the surface of the ice. Because of the low saline levels, most of the coastline in the north freezes over during the harsh winter, impassable by boats. But often the ice is strong enough to carry other traffic, walkers, skiers, horses and sledges. And in modern times, ice roads are cleared for the cars.
You with the camera.
Tor took down the camera for some under-ice images.
There's a big gap there.
We are outside a pretty residential island. There are a couple of wrecks here in a shallow water that the divers go to see regularly. This is not only ice diving, it's also town centre diving. We never thought we could do this in such a civilised manner. The water was really murky today, so we concentrated on the surface pictures. This often happens in the Baltic. The visibility can be really poor. The divers did a short dive to see the wreck anyway, without the camera.
We'll make a quick dive to the wreck. Just swim out and then we'll swim back.
Yeah. Okay.
You can swim the bubbles or whatever.
Yeah.
My feet are like small ice cubes. No, my toes. You can chop off them and put them in a drink.
Don't splash.
Don't splash.
It couldn't have been a more beautiful day. The sun was shining, everyone was having fun.
Why they give up?
Can't give up.
Remember these faces. We'll meet these people again soon. They are going to be our main diving team in this series, sharing their stories, doing expeditions and spending time with us at the Baltic.
What are you doing in the plane?
It's the guy's point of view.
The next trip they will make will be Narvik. They will send us some great video footage from there. Soon it will be summer and we'll spend more time together. Now, back to the Vasa and her salvage operation.
There was a civilian engineer who worked for the Swedish Navy named Anders Franzén, who was very interested, like a lot of naval officers in that period were, in the history of the Swedish Navy. And one of the ones he was most interested in was Vasa. And there were historical documents that indicated approximately where the ship sank. So he started searching the area using a homemade coring device. It was a plummet, essentially a punch on the end of a weight that he would drop over the side and then see what stuck in the punch. And he searched the area off of Beckholmen Island systematically doing this until he hit an area where he was getting plugs of wood, of black oak, waterlogged oak in the coring device. 2 divers went down, and one actually ended up on the ship, and the other ended up next to it and reported that he was up against a huge wooden wall with square holes cut in it. And his name was Per Edvin Felting, and he was the Swedish Navy's chief salvage diver. There isn't any other known warship that sank in Stockholm Harbor that would fit that description, except Vasa. It wasn't an archaeological project, it was a salvage project to raise the ship and conserve it and put it on display, driven initially by the Swedish Navy. All of the Navy's divers had to do an annual checkout dive. And the Navy simply decreed that that checkout dive would be working on Vasa. What they planned to do was refloat it. And so they had to block up all the gun ports. And the stern castle here behind us, this had all collapsed and been torn off by an anchor that had been dragged through the ship, probably in the 20th century. And so they had to close in that area so it would be watertight. So they built a new transom around the ship and a little bit at the bow. But interestingly, the way they raised the ship is essentially the same way that Ian Bulmer was trying to raise the ship in 1628. They took cables from the ship, in this case going under the ship rather than hooks, up to 2 floating pontoons that were pumped full of water, the cables were tightened up, and then the water was pumped out, and that would lift the ship a meter or so that then they'd move it till it grounded out again, pump the pontoons full of water, tighten the cables, pump the water out, lift it another meter, move it further in until they could park it in Kastelholmsviken. But they brought up over 3,500 objects from the pit after they raised the ship, mostly bits of sculpture and the structure of the stern castle and the beakhead that had fallen off.
And the last big thing they raised was the ship's boat, the big ship's boat, 12-meter flat bottom boat. The conservation took about 17 years, just the conservation of the wood.
To spray it with polyethylene glycol, and then another 9 years to dry it out after that. The restoration process went on with the conservation process. One of the things that is unique and powerful about this particular find, because there isn't anywhere else that you can go and see essentially a complete original warship from the days of sail. I mean, if you go to see Victory in England, you're not actually seeing Nelson's Victory, you're seeing a lot of new oak and teak that has replaced Nelson's Victory. Or the same with USS Constitution in Boston or any of the other old wooden ships. What you're seeing here is you're seeing the original ship, at least 95% of it. And that has a very powerful effect on your imagination. I mean, we work here, we see it every day, and it's still, every time I come into the ship hall, I get that oh wow moment. But I can see how just standing next to it, it can affect your imagination that powerfully, to give you that sense of place and that sense of a past time.
The Vasa Museum attracts 850,000 visitors from all over the world each year. No wonder, Vasa is breathtaking. Just opposite to the Vasa Museum, there's the beautiful building of the Nordic Museum. You don't have to go far for more information about the local history. Stockholm became the official capital of the Swedish Empire in 1634. Stockholm had monopoly over trade between the foreign merchants and the Scandinavian territories. In this wealthy period, great palaces and castles were built. This is the Baroque-style castle of the popular Swedish royal family. The castle is for official use only and open for public. Just like in London, the changing of guards is a popular tourist pastime. The guard dates back to the early 16th century. Stockholm became an Hanse town in the 13th century. The German Hanseatic League was a trading monopoly in the Baltic Sea area. It remained a commercial association, not a political one. The League offered protection and privileges to its member towns and negotiated toll breaks with trading partners such as the City of London. The member towns prospered, which can still be detected in the impressive medieval architecture. And of course, one of the local attractions is this, the beautiful Swedish girls, and they seem to know that. The city of Stockholm has spread far beyond the small islands of the old town, but it's a beautiful place to see, and one of our favourite towns, full of narrow cobbled alleyways, shops, restaurants and bars, old churches and medieval town squares. These pretty scenes hide many bloody battles, mostly against the Danish rule, and mostly about the supremacy of the Baltic Sea trading routes. The dispute between Sweden and Denmark went on for hundreds of years. Stockholm prides itself as the business and cultural capital of Scandinavia, argued by many Danes who see Copenhagen as the capital of Scandinavia. So a battle of some sort still goes on with the Danes, luckily a less bloody one. The hunt for the U-479 continues.